Who's gonna be held responsible for controlling the hours of operation? That's a question. Are there any answers here?
Yeah, so the town zoning enforcement officer,
And he's gonna be available, he's gonna be able to go down and check on a regular basis and give us reports?
yes, that's her job,
And we have her phone number, we can call her if we think this is wrong?
here at the town hall, yes.
Who is it?
It's Cindy Dunn.
Okay. I'm sorry, I had to go get my tablet to write the questions down. The last question was who is responsible for enforcing the hours?
They're controlling the hours. of
Pardon?
operation. Controlling the hours of
Controlling the hours.
operation.
So the hours are set 7 to 5.
No weekends?
7 to 5?
7 and the weekends is 7 to 5 too, I believe.
That's wrong.
No.
Don't we have
Well-
Saturday for our own peace and
Just,
quiet?
Can I finish saying one? And you haven't identified yourself.
Okay.
So what happens if someone comes into the office and says that this particular gravel operation is working at 6 PM on a Thursday night, then you come in and you tell me they're working at 6 PM on a Thursday night, and then I go out and I talk to the operators and to the owners of the operation, and say you
And
cannot
we're
do
concerned
that.
about the early starts.
Pardon?
We're concerned about the early starts.
7.
It's 7 AM.
Because down in Thompson, down on Riverside, those trucks are barreling through there at 6:30, water after
Then
6.
somebody has to come in and tell me.
Well, I don't live there.
I know, so I'm not gonna know because at 6:30 I'm getting dressed to come to
Well,
work.
this is my point. Who's watching?
Pretty much the neighbors,
Okay.
and that's why you come in and, file that concern with the office, and then we go and we check that concern out. I'm just looking
Is someone
for-
gonna get back to us about an engineer being hired?
So, so that, Mr. Rice?
We have an agreement with NECOG, the Northeast Council of Governments,
Yeah.
that they have an engineer on staff. And if we feel that we need engineering services, they're the people that we contact.
But that's as needed. We don't have any of the spot checks.
No.
That doesn't make sense to me. How do we know?
I would,
So then,
I would maybe suggest go talk to the town.
I thought I was talking to town.
so hiring a staff
Selectmen-
is the
selectmen does
purview
the
of the
hiring.
person.
And he probably next year or this year, they're still in budget season, we need a town engineer and add it to the budget. And you know what's gonna happen then?
The 2 years will be gone.
That you add
This will be a
another,
mess.
no, that you're gonna add another $75,000-$80,000 to your budget.
Okay, what do you think he's gonna do to the roads with these trucks going down? The roads are in
They're already destroyed.
Well,
deterioration now. The town tried to fix them themselves a couple of years ago, and it did nothing. Roads are already in a state of deterioration. How can they assure us that these trucks are not gonna make it worse? When the roads are worse, they'll be gone, and our taxes will go up to fix the roads. That's hindsight, that's no good to us.
Mr. Rice?
Well, we tried to respond to part of that. The Board of Finance last Thursday night approved $1.4 million for road reconstruction. And if you wanna find out what the roads are, as everybody in town knows, the roads are in pretty bad shape, but townspeople put the money in the budget, get a referendum, they shoot it down, so where do they go? They cut the roads. The roads over the schools get cut. And as far as the, any developer or individual that's taking material and using our roads, their trucks all pay a road tax. In addition to, they pay us for two cents a yard. And their current application, I think they paid something like $2,300.
Anybody get much asphalt for $2,300?
It's baby stuff. At least we have something.
Have you been down, I'm sure you've been down Spicer Road.
Yes.
Last time they tried to fix it, they called me at work to use my well water for their roller, and then they went around my driveway in the street.
I understand, but that.
Well, I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, well, we don't control the roads, unfortunately.
Well, you controlled, it was the town people did the paving.
Yeah, I know, but you have to go to the selectmen.
There we are, we're being
or Rich
reactive
is the
opposed to
town.
being proactive. That's the problem here.
Well,
I haven't heard an answer that you guys can solve yet.
well, I don't think it's our job to pave the roads.
Not pave the roads,
I
but
know.
prevent them from getting worse. That's not your job? Planning, all this stuff? I'm not done yet. How are they gonna control the noise pollution? Is there gonna be a noise, are the loaders gonna be decibel count? What is the decibels for a residential area?
55 dBs,
Okay, and if they go above that, who do I call?
the zoning enforcement officer,
And that would be,
Cindy Johnson.
and she's going to go down and tell them, hey,
No, I'll probably call the,
they have decibel meters, we can get one, we can get one. We can hear it from the road, that's above.
We did it at the racetrack.
The racetrack is protected with the trees.
Sir, so just, continue, you can continue your questions, but just stay directed to the commission, please.
She's gonna issue a citation.
Just-
Yeah, is there gonna be any citations, any penalties
Or just written,
with any of these issues?
a written law.
So Ms. Dunn, the question is, how will you respond to a complaint?
I respond the first time as I go down there and I talk to them and I give them a certain amount
You
of
can
time.
lashing with, talking to,
Ms. Dunn,
and what happens after that?
Sir,
No, that.
Can I finish?
please let her.
Sorry.
So I go down there and I tell them what the complaint is, and I give them an opportunity to, talk about that complaint, or defend it, the complaint. And if the complaint is still legitimate, then I say you have 10 days to resolve it. And then after the 10 days, then they start getting their notices of first violation, and then there's a process after that.
And the penalties to be,
Fines.
yeah,
Yes.
that's what we wanna know.
Mhm.
Another question on the
Just wait,
complaint.
so he has the floor.
He has the floor.
There's no information on weight limits on the two bridges in the area. Should that be addressed before we start sending these trucks down there? On a regular basis?
Let's keep reading, Joe.
What's the policy for dust control? Yeah,
They're not answering anything.
Wait.
The weight factor, as you know, I can only assume, we can ask Mr. Lawson, is that the trucks exiting that will be heading south on Quakertown Farm Road.
and where's it going, where they headed?
Probably, I would think, either Plant and Putnam.
Some of these things we can address, we're just waiting to
Okay.
get to it.
All right, then we'll let them
Address your
address
question.
We really don't want a location there
As,
until all these answers
as you know, there's trucks currently traveling that road.
are. Right,
And that there's a bridge over Robbins Brook. That's the only bridge you're concerned with.
so how are they gonna get there? Are they gonna be coming down Spicer Road at all?
No,
No.
I will have to ask the
Well,
contractor.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Will they be coming down Spicer Road? What's the policy with dust control? We have something in place?
According to our regulations and his plan. Can I answer, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
Everybody has a plan. If you
Not
read-
everybody, just, you couldn't get, everybody couldn't get one.
No, no, no.
Actually addressed in the,
Okay, I think I'll let, yeah, I'll let the engineer.
if you wanna go through your questions, we can address them after you've gone through the rest of the highway or an issue.
Is wetting down the roads gonna be happening to keep the dust down?
Yes.
If that's it, where's the water supply? Where's the water source coming from?
Okay, well,
Like I
so
said, if you'd like to go through the questions, we'll address
We're
them after.
noting your question.
Just ask them.
Yeah, I'm asking you now.
Sir, so the way a public hearing works is you're gonna direct your questions to the chair. Once you
But
finish,
my concern is you're gonna vote on this after I sit down.
sir, I'm taking your questions. I'm gonna direct them to Mr. Health, and we'll make sure you get your answers before anything continues.
In my closing, I personally find the town's documentation very covert, lacking intelligence, sincerity, and honesty for the town's best interest. I'm sorry, but with all the documentation we've been digging up, there's a lot of unanswered questions. A lot of things missing. That's my statement.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, for the secretary, could you repeat your name?
Jim Sorrow,
Jim Sarah, thank you.
now I got a bullseye on my house.
Should you spell your last name?
S-A-U-R-O.
So, thank you, Mr. Sarah.
The question is not diverted to
So,
Mr. Ross?
yeah, I'm gonna have Mr. Hel,
Can we ask them rather than you?
nope, you're gonna direct all the questions to the chair, that's how a public hearing operates.
Okay.
And we'll direct them to Mr. Held and to Mr. So Mr. Held,
He's gonna tell you.
Sure, so we'll start with dust control. Seems to be a topical concern. So dust control is addressed in the excavation notes. Typically, that is done by spreading water on the excavation. In the event that that does not work, there's the option of spreading calcium chloride, which is an accepted method for dust control. Typically, the dust will be a problem with the truck traffic in and out over the entrance driveway. That's part of the reason that we do have the anti-tracking pad. And that would typically be the area where the water is applied. Would be in this area here.
And where's that water source?
Well, there's a pond on site where that water can be taken from, or an over-the-road water truck can be brought onto the site. And utilized that way. Rossi does have.
I think due to the sensitivity of the neighborhood, I'm okay with just doing calcium chloride right off the get-go rather than trying water and see if it works or not. I think calcium's a good solution and I'm okay with doing that right from the start.
do you want to discuss the traffic on the bridges?
Sure, traffic on bridges, so if there's no weight limit imposed on the bridges, that means that the bridges are been deemed to be in satisfactory condition to take a standard highway load. These trucks are not overloaded beyond the standard highway load, so the bridges are, in fact, okay to handle those loads. As far as other concerns, as Mr. Rice mentioned, part of the application fee, and we work with Rawson and other aggregate producers in a lot of towns, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, the application fees in Thompson are quite high in comparison to surrounding towns. And part of the reason, like Mr. Rice brought up, there actually is a component of that fee, recognizing that heavy truck traffic does cause accelerated wear on the road, so there's extra money put in the application fee to try and offset some of that. So some of it is there. With regard to the site itself, as I mentioned, the regulations do require that the applicant post a cash bond. Again, in comparison to every other town pretty much that we do business in, that's very rare to have a town that requires a cash bond. Typically, it's a performance bond. The fact that you have cash on hand basically puts the onus on the applicant to do what they're being approved to do as far as site restoration, and if they don't, the town actually does have real funds to go in and do something about it. So, from the standpoint of protection, the town of Thompson actually has pretty good teeth to make sure that things are taken care of.
Well, how do you explain, new road, and how do you explain, I mean, we went by the other day, we got pictures of it, I mean, it looks like a sci-fi
Mr.
space.
Chairman, I'm not going
Yeah.
to engage in discussions about other excavations.
But it's all for the same company.
I will
Why,
say,
excuse
and
me,
I
excuse me,
think,
why would the
Sir,
town
just a minute.
why would the town
Sir,
issue
sir,
another permit?
Sir,
If they
you
haven't
let him
cleaned up the
finish,
act from
you will
before.
be heard after you let him.
I had the floor, but you're not answering all the
Over speak. I'm sorry, please continue, Joe.
with regard to other sites, the zoning enforcement officer does keep tabs on the bonding on sites. There is provisions for annual permit renewals, at which time bonding is reviewed as far as the open areas, making sure enough money is in place. I know nothing about Star Road, I've had no involvement in it. I can say with regard to New Road, all the bonding is in place. They've actually taken it upon themselves to renew that permit so that the restoration work can be done. But as far as the nuts and bolts of those other sites, it's not really germane to this application.
In terms of factual questions, there.
You wrote them down, you said.
Yes, and I was asking.
Well, the
gentleman-
question is, why would you consider giving another permit if the other lots that they've had permits for are not brought to the conditions that everybody agreed on.
So it's still an open permit and
2005 to now?
we will continue to, as long as a permit is in compliance with our regulations.
Doesn't
we
say
will
much for your
continue.
zoning committee.
So,
Yes, ma'am,
question.
please, your
Yeah,
name and
sure.
address for the
Donna,
record.
Donna Sorrow, I live at 150 Spicer Road. So he only has 2 years. Was the new road 2 years to bring all that stuff out?
So every, a gravel operation is granted a permit for 1 year and they must renew every year. And as long as they have an active permit,
So he could continue for another 10 years?
Yeah.
it would have to come in every year for a renewal.
Ridiculous.
Frank Urisic, 39 Logan's Lane,
Could you spell that last name for me?
Urisic, Y-U-R-I-S-I-C.
Thank you.
All right, I built a home here and I plan on selling, because I'm 72, my wife's retiring in another 2 years, and we plan on moving out of Connecticut. Who do I sue if I can prove that my home is devalued? Who can I sue if my water table is damaged? They're talking about calcium chloride. You know, I'm from a farm, I was born and raised on a farm, I know what that stuff is. And, so as far as Spicer Road, it's a disaster now. If they do travel Spicer Road at all, there's a danger at the intersection of Spicer Road and East Thompson Road. I probably 2 or 3 times a week, I almost get hit with just regular car traffic. And, this doesn't seem right to me. When I moved here, the racetrack only raced certain days a week. Now they have them racing every day with those, we call them taco grinders, every day. And you can't even have a peace and quiet in the evening to have a cookout outside. Now we're gonna have this, and God only knows where it's gonna go to. Thank you.
Sir?
Don't you have to answer his questions?
I'm not a lawyer, I'm not qualified to give legal advice,
Well,
and those were his 2 questions.
Would you like me to address a couple of those questions?
Certainly, Mr. Hunt.
So as far as the truck traffic on Spicer Road, the intention is that there's not going to be any. The excavated material is going to go from this site to Rawson's processing facility on Munyon Road, so it would actually go down Aquatic Town Farm Road. With regard to impacts to the water table, again, we've actually done soil investigations out there to make sure that we're not getting into the water table. Calcium chloride is a dust control method that's recognized by Connecticut DEP as an acceptable means of controlling the dust, so.
Yeah, but that area is all gravel, and you can't tell me that water from there can't contaminate for probably a half a mile away from it. Because you're basically making a sip. Water from that is gonna contaminate a large area. Because it's all gravel, that whole area is gravel. My lawn, I can't even put water on it, it disappears immediately. So it's going to be a problem, and who's gonna be responsible for it?
So I'm gonna actually recognize the gentleman I had already recognized, and then.
Hi, I'm James Clark, 113 Labby Road. So, I am a concerned resident of Thompson. First thing I have to ask, what is the benefit of this operation in town? I heard a little bit of money, okay? I wanna get back onto that later. I must admit, I was here last month for a permit of my own to conduct a medical healthcare business that would potentially help many residents in the northern part of Connecticut. In my own experience, my wife and I have been required to fulfill local, state, and federal requirements in order to receive the necessary approval. We had to demonstrate our own business model and its benefit to the community. I'm assuming it's really gonna benefit everybody. I understand businesses should benefit a town, or at least not cause a negative long-term impact. I question how this business of current concern can benefit the town of Thompson. Upon minimal investigation, I learned that this individual in question had many other locations in the past. Gravel operations have taken place in Plainfield, Putnam, Brooklyn, Canterbury, Connecticut. In Canterbury on September 13, 2012, permits were revoked in accordance to court documentation CV 35005787. Even though permits were revoked by the commission, gravel operations continued despite the revocation of the permit according to the court document CV 135005787. I cannot imagine what penalties I would be facing if I chose to operate a medical business without the proper permits or authorizations, yet this company in question has already been caught doing so in another town. I will also state that I am a member of the Board of Thompson Board of Assessment of Appeals. And while reading court documents, I found in CV 36005787 states example 7. This is from the court document. Is a notice showing action that the town's Board of Assessment Appeals reducing the assessed value of property in a butter by 25%. Secondly, these conditions have diminished the value of properties in the neighborhood of the business. In addition to the tangible detail, the flouting of the town's regulations and administrative directives on a daily basis is not tolerable in a society based upon the rule of law. Examples 13A and B and 15 are photographs. I'm going to dig up those photographs, depicting what has become a veritable mountain of gravel clearly visible by the distant offsite. Thirdly, there is an ongoing harm to the town of Canterbury in forcing it to tolerate what has become a major enterprise conducting an environmentally sensitive operation in the absence of any local oversight. This is directly from the court documents. Once again, this was all in the town of Canterbury. However, if this much damage took place and it resulted in the reduction of the values of homes and abutting properties in Canterbury, I can simply imagine that the residents of Thompson here would be met with a very similar outcome of their properties being less desirable, and ultimately met with the already been witnessed from recent operations by many of the residents here in Thompson. Overall, I think it would be proper that there should obviously be an extension to this public hearing. I would like to know what benefit the town would get from the operation and why benefit the town. What benefit did the town get from the picture that I provided? Did the town receive any money for that? How much? That's a question.
Can you pass the picture down?
It's northeast corner of Connecticut.
Where is this located?
Northeast corner of Connecticut. Where is that?
New Road style.
New Road style. Is it? Let's see.
I don't know which one that is, which one you got.
New road, looks like a new road.
Yeah, New Road.
Looks beautiful. Looks like Afghanistan.
It's not breaking down any questions we have.
How much are you guys paying the town for this operation? Per yard?
2 cents or something like that.
I think you guys paid my uncle more.
Sir, again, I'll promise to the chair, please. Is the 2 cents per yard is the standard according to our regulations in the town of Thompson.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry,
2 cents, that's the standard?
is what's set by Thompson.
Well, then I will, put that on my part, and not do an investigation on how much normal, on average a town would receive. But, I mean, I'm more shocked at the fact that clearly it states from previous court documents that people's homes went down in price. I mean, I am on the Board of Assessment of Appeals, so, I mean, I feel that that's gonna really affect us as a town as a whole. Because, I mean, those people are gonna be coming in to see me. So I have to look at it that way for a good point of it. And I mean, it's not just me, it's all the members on the board. And I can't speak for them though.
I think, so, believe you asked, the question you asked was, what is the benefit of this operation
Yeah.
to the town?
I'm really curious.
Mr. Held or Mr.
Sure.
Okay.
So as far as what is the applicant going to pay the town?
No.
Yep.
What's the
No.
benefit of you conducting
What's
this?
the overall benefit? I mean, we're gonna be doing a business, right? Like, I look for the fact that there's gotta be some sort of bigger benefit as a whole for the town. I mean, besides just tearing up ground and then
And
selling
making
the money off the gravel and the stone. I know what it's all about. My family did this stuff. I know all about it.
The question is if there would be any benefit to the town.
No, what is the benefit?
What is the benefit to the town?
I'm sorry, what is the benefit to the town?
Well, Mr. Rawson can perhaps add a little bit more to this, but Mr. Rawson is an employer in the local area. And again, we do work for a number of other aggregate and sand and gravel producers. And I really have no problem going on record and saying that Jeff Rawson personally and Rawson Materials as a company kind of goes out of their way to give back to the communities that they do business in. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but again, I have.
Can we have an example? An example would be great.
Excuse me, sir, I don't interrupt you. Could you allow me to?
Sure, go ahead,
Answer the
sorry.
questions that you've asked?
Right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. With regard to your investigation into whatever transpired in Canterbury, I believe you continue to investigate that. You would find that there was actually a stipulated settlement agreement that was reached between Rawson Materials and the town of Canterbury. That's why they operate with no permits in place. They've been operating under the terms of that stipulated settlement since it came into being. There's been no violations of that to my knowledge. It's worked very well, and the town of Canterbury is actually in the process of working with Rawson to make that a permanent fixture.
And if I could add to that, if the commission would like, they're certainly able to call Missy, the zoning enforcement officer, attorney Mark Brantz, who represents the town, or Mike Flynn, the chairman of their zoning commission, and ask about our reputation, ask how we've been as corporate stewards of the town of Canterbury.
Who's the CEO again, Jeff?
Missy, let's take it over.
546-6857.
546-6857.
Anybody in the public would like to call it.
Any other,
about-
I'm gonna go Ms. Sorrow and.
Miss Sorrow, Donna Sorrow, how would you ask Mr. Rawson if he would like to sand and pick gravel across from his house? Nice question.
Mr. Rawson?
I'd love to answer that question. So I grew up next door to the sand and gravel operation. I lived there for a number of years. Then when it came time to build a house of my own, I built the house on a retired gravel pit. We have a beautiful pond there, and I thoroughly enjoy living there. My father lives next door to me. My brother and sister-in-law live next door to me, and it's a great community.
So you said that there's, with the, I'm curious to know is what that court document, what that docket number is, so I can actually do look and actually take a look at that.
We have the docket number, this.
The attorney might have it, but I don't.
Do you know the date? Do they know the date?
The latest agreement was, it was modified in 2015, 2016.
You said the most recent agreement was modified in
Yeah,
twenty
so it
fifteen.
was, the original agreement was in 2014, was the original stipulated settlement agreement. It was opened and modified in 2015, which I believe was accepted by the court in January of 2016. And we are again in the process of modifying to create a permanent agreement.
So that permanent agreement being, they're still in operation, they're still removing gravel, correct?
Since we are in compliance with all the terms.
Currently.
That's how that works.
So the most recent modification was accepted, it seems in January 2016, and they are currently in a process to modify it to a permanent settlement.
Is there any evidence of further, properties being assessed at a lower valuation since then?
You know, is there any,
Not to our knowledge.
not to their knowledge?
Guess we have to find out.
Yes, Mr. Blackburn.
I'd like to answer one of the questions on, what benefit this is to the town. I'm from town, 10 times that I've had to purchase crushed stone. I've bought stone from Rawson Materials. It's not a huge thing, but all your local contractors, when they're putting in a septic system for you or whatever, they have to have material that meets state specs. That's a place you can get it, you don't go dig that out of the back hill. There's numerous small contractors that utilize the same, material the same way.
That works well for a selectman that niche.
Sir?
Evan McHugh, 116 Spicer Road. Picking up on the question that was asked, I'd like to understand, Mr. Chairman, if the committee has considered the economic benefit to the town as to what is the net benefit to this project. Direct economic benefit to Thompson, not the surrounding area. To the question that was raised relative to aggregate being available through other means, my question is actually one of, this is in effect a commercial operation that will be taking place on this residentially zoned property. So has the property been rezoned, or will it be rezoned into a commercial? And given that there are tenants living in the house today, are they planning on continuing to live there, and as such, would that not require having the town to rezone it as a mixed-use commercial residential? I see you, sir, shaking your head. Would you like to respond to my question?
Well, a gravel permit can be issued anywhere in an RA 80 or an R40 district with our approval.
I understand that.
Okay, well, that happens to be an R40, and we don't change the zone just because it's gonna be a gravel pit for 2 years.
But 100,000 cubic yards of material being moved in, as, an approximation, is a commercial operation by any stretch. Rawson is not in this operation, and I appreciate he's running a business. He's doing it to turn a profit. So the regulations currently as they sit mean that we're going to get about $2,200 for this from fee, plus the bond of $6,000 per acre, so there's another $30,000 or $40,000 there. To me, that doesn't seem as if it's equitable. So my question to you, to the chair, is, as we look at ways to raise revenue and improve the town of Thompson, should we not consider increasing the tippage fees for them, for the haul fees, as a part of this process, so that we have the ability to raise additional revenue for the benefit of the town, given the question around the roads and so forth? So that's a question I'd like answered to that. The last question that I have, back to the direct economic benefit of this project to this town, is what are the guidelines that the zoning commission evaluates the benefit of the project and issuing of the permit for this, from what are the guidelines that you evaluate, what are the criteria, rather, that you specifically do use to evaluate these projects and issuing the permit? Is it purely the engineering documents and the site excavation plan, or is there any consideration of the economic benefit to the townspeople?
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Zoning regulations, particularly what we're talking about here this evening, to answer your question, we're guided by statute. Now, if you wish to have that type of impact statewide, I would talk to your representative and get it written into Connecticut statute. We can't.
So I appreciate the state statute, but I'm asking, given that all politics are local, in the context of how this planning and zoning commission evaluates the economic benefit of approving a permit, and this is a commercial operation, let's be honest, he's not running a charity. He has payroll, he has millions of dollars worth of equipment tied up in this. There's obviously an investment in the pad, the road, the prep of this property to get this, let alone buying it in the first place for $200,000. But my question is, fairly straightforward of what is the criteria that this committee uses to assess whether or not a permit is approved based on the economic benefit. Because you've heard some of the concerns this evening based on concerns of the roads, concerns of the remediation. Well, the reality is that per our own statute, that your government, that you're referring
It's our
to.
regulations.
I understand that, Mr. Hill, that we're only going to receive a relatively small pittance in comparison to the total profit that the Rawson organization is going to be yielding from this facility. So my question is, given the disparity between the amount of money that the town is going to receive from an economic benefit versus clearly the profit that the Rawson organization is gonna get, which they have every right to make a profit in this, I have no issue with that. I think there's a disparity here, and I'd like to understand how the zoning committee, in evaluating issuing the permit, would look at that disparity and then be able to defend that decision should the permit be issued and the project be allowed to move forward.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hill, could you repeat your address for the record?
116 Spicer Road, my name is Evan McHugh.
Thank you. I mean, I can not speak for Mr. Rice.
The, I don't know what regulation it is, but we've done it several times, but the town is not, cannot make regulations based on a profit to the town. When we did that 2%, I mean, 2 cents a yard, it was very difficult to do that. The reason we could do that, it was based on not necessarily making money for the town, but for the repair of the roads of that nature. We said that money would be into the road repair cost.
How much money is that so far? You know?
But to that end, though,
Well,
if I could.
this application to that gentleman, there was somewhat $2,300.
$23.35.
So, I mean,
So to that end, we're buying effectively 75 feet worth of asphalt, having recently redone a chunk of my driveway. I appreciate the town being governed by statute. My question though still stands.
Right.
How does this committee evaluate, not from a profit perspective, but remember, words matter, the economic benefit to the town for allowing this project to go forward? There are other sites that Mr. Rawson could go ahead and excavate. It doesn't have to be a 363, let alone my previous question of whether or not, you know, it's still zoned from the residential. And I understand you're saying that you can issue a permit to pull out 100,000 yards of this based on it being zoned to R40 or R80. But again, my question is, how is this committee evaluating the economic benefit to the town for this?
sir, I'll do my best to answer that question. I can't speak for all of the members of the commission. What I would say is that our regulations are written with that guide in mind, and that all we can do as a commission on each individual case is to determine whether or not an application meets the requirements of the regulation and proceed from there. Ma'am.
My name is Kelly Clark. I'm at 315 Quacktown Farm Road. That is the third lot off that map. My son is immunocompromised and respiratory compromised. What is going to be done to protect the air quality? What is going to be done to protect my already semi-tainted well from God knows what that we just put $4,000 into to repair to appropriate standards? We're not rich people. Where is the extra money going to come from my son's additional air quality control I'm going to need to purchase to make sure that he's okay? His additional prescriptions? Where's the responsibility of this company to these trucks that, excuse my language, tear ass up and down Quacktown Farm Road? And I have called every trunking company number that I have seen and witnessed on my road to the town as well, call the trucking company, and I've gotten nowhere, and I've gotten no slower vehicles, I've gotten no more safety on my street. Where is the control? Where's supposed to be a governing basis? Where is it coming from? Who do I call directly? Because when I call the clerk's office, I get call the company. And I've called the company. And no offense, I've worked in several different fields, one being from a very large trucking company in Worcester, Mass. Not one of my drivers would haul ass in the middle of the road by all means,
Right.
the way these vehicles do, coming out of this man's already operating unit down the street. Now again, maybe he's gonna hire 2 truckers to come out of this road, that there's going to be a few hundred feet from my home. That could happen. I sincerely doubt it, considering the size of this company. Maybe he'll choose a different trucking company. Again, I sincerely doubt it. Where is the protection? I'm not talking about sound. We moved a couple miles from a track, I'm not stupid. I also work in a medical field, and I am being extremely selfish. I wanna know who is going to protect my child from everything that is going to be spewed into the environment. No amount of chemical, no amount of water, nothing is going to control that. I'm not stupid, I grew up a few couple miles from Pine Pits in Douglas, Mass. This is not something that you move to the middle of nowhere to have 500 feet from your home. I have an in-ground pool. I have beautiful, beautiful swampy water in my backyard that I don't want covered in a layer of crud. Not to mention, where are they going to relocate all of this wildlife and environmental hazards that they're going to then send out looking for new home and new placement to then be in my yard attacking my child, attacking my animals, my dogs, my property that I already have to deal with? You live in the woods. We all live in the woods. We all move here to be in the woods. That's what you do. That's why we're here. But when you destroy acres and acres of property that these creatures live on, they instantaneously seek to move elsewhere. So when that happens, and I have to call the animal control officer, and I have to call the police department because they don't show up, and then I have to call the state police department because we don't have a local one, which is fine. And then I have to call and hire my own pest control guy because it's somewhere where I can't get rid of it myself. Who do I contact? I want a person. Do I get their personal cell phone number and say, hey, I have a raccoon in my pool. I don't know if it's rabid or not. How do I get rid of it? Where's the money coming from? Where does that protection come from? Who do I get to get that kind of knowledge and information and certificate? Like, yep, it's gonna come, we're gonna help you, we authorize this, this is happening, we did it, we're gonna fix it. Who do I get to know to fix it when this happens?
Thank you. Do you want to speak to the air quality and water quality?
There's nothing they can do with air, dust flies.
I'll try my best. So again, we have documented the soil conditions out there to make sure that we're not digging into the groundwater table. I think everybody agrees this area is composed mainly of sand and gravel. That's called stratified drift. I don't know what your wells are like, whether they're real or bedrock, or whether they're into stratified drift. But digging into gravel does not impact the regional groundwater table. Even if you are digging in the water table, the water's there. If you're digging in it, you're digging in it. It doesn't lower it, it doesn't raise it, it doesn't really have any effect hydrogeologically on it whatsoever. So we're not going to have any impact on people's wells. With regard to the dust, the zoning regulations do require the appropriate control of dust. There's also deep regulations that require dust be controlled, and I don't know if MSHA speaks to that, but this will be an MSHA regulated site as well. So we'd have to comply with all of those regulations.
Yes, Claire.
So it doesn't affect the water table when you hit it. You're saying that, sorry, you would be saying that disturbing something several hundred feet from something else, per se, as a septic, needs to be, I believe, 200 feet away from your well or more? I'm not sure what the town guidelines is. Sorry, I don't know my numbers very well. But, you can't tell me that something over here, that's water, that's over here, that's only separated by, well, earth, dirt, gravel, dust, rock, concrete, whatever else, roots, tree roots, grass roots, whatever, that se, and then mix into the soil and travel. That's what things do. They're called microbes, biomes, atoms, parasites even.
To
I'm
answer
a
your question,
parapsychologist by
they
trade.
have to stay so many feet above the water table, they're not allowed to,
And
unless they're digging a pond, then they can go into the water table. But, I'm sorry, I missed the very first of this, but I believe this is all above the water table, is that correct?
Correct.
And who governs this if they hit it? Who's there to see it? To be like, oh,
The
badness, we have to
the
stop.
zoning enforcement officer goes out and checks, they have a well, not a well, a pipe, and so they can measure the water depth from the ground to where the water is, the top of the ground, and that's the zoning enforcement officer checks on that.
And has there been a study or any kind of evaluation as to how far these things travel in general? Do we have that information? Is that given to us? Is that something that you can provide?
I'm not sure what you're looking for.
As far as what study or what environmental issue or project or,
State Department.
Well,
any
Mr.
kind of-
Hill went to school for that type of thing. I don't pretend to have the answer for that.
but is there like something like, even per se governing?
Impacts to the groundwater table was a concern that the Wetlands Commission had. The Wetlands Commission did approve this, plan revisions were made to the grading based on the Wetlands Commission's concerns. I don't know if the public people here are familiar with who your wetlands agent is. She's a woman who worked for many, many years for Connecticut Heat in their Inland Water Resources Division. Her name is Marla Butts. She's extremely knowledgeable about things of this nature. She went out and walked the site. She's comfortable with the revisions that we made. She understands the soils. She understands the groundwater hydrology. She understands that we did make these adjustments as appropriate to make sure that we do not impact the water table. As far as were any studies done, yes, we did dig test pits across the entire excavation area. I think we dug like a dozen test pits out there, which is extremely dense for excavating 5 acres of gravel. So we're pretty comfortable with what the ground conditions are out there.
Hi, my name's Robert Mann. I live at 15 Meadow Drive. Years ago, I did live at 143 Spicer Road, so a lot of these people were my neighbors. They actually called me, asked me to come and see what we could be done about this, because even, it's not in my backyard, it's still in my town as far as I'm concerned. I've attended some things in town. Thompson's trying to brand itself right now as a green and growing community. That means we're trying to sell our town for the trails, the green environment, the animals, the wildlife. People come to Thompson because they don't want to live in Webster, where there's a lot of businesses, and they don't want to live in Putnam, where there's a lot of businesses. Thompson's kind of that peaceful in-between, and everybody likes that. That's why I've stayed here. My parents moved here when I was like 5 years old. I think in my 20s, I moved out of Thompson for like 2 or 3 years and lived in Webster, and then I bought my first house on Spicer Road. And I profited when I sold that house. It worked out well for me. You drive around the town of Thompson and you'll see lots of signs. You get off the highway, you see a sign. It says farm-friendly community. That means that we're supposed to welcome farms. This is a farm. The man said 300 years old. That means we're allowing the destruction of a farm in the town of Thompson. 300 years old, he said that it hasn't been disturbed. It might have been a Christmas tree farm. Has there been any kind of study on this property that shows what kind of animals are on this property? We have Buck Hill Management Area, which has endangered species in it. We have, there's another preserve, I believe, over off of Quartertown Farm Road that I think the Davis family donated, right next to the bridge where New Road comes in. There's another preserve almost a half mile up the street from this that the Wyndham Land Trust owns. Has this property had any kind of survey to see if there's any endangered box turtles? I know people, every time there's something that goes on in anybody's town, this is the first thing they bring up. So I hope nobody's rolling their eyes, which I don't see anybody rolling their eyes, but people do roll their eyes. They go, here we go again. But Has there been any study on this property for that? That's a concern of mine. Another concern, has there been any road study? I mean, some of the people here I hear have said that the trucks are barreling down Quattictown Farm Road already. Has there been any traffic study on Quattictown Farm Road for the further impact of this project? You know, is it gonna make it worse? Is there gonna be even more trucks going down the road? My phone shut off, so I had just a few bullet points I wanted to go through. Oh, let's see. Come on, phone. All right, let's see. Home values. They already touched on that. The road failure. Now, I'm on the Board of Finance. I'm not speaking here for the Board of Finance. But as he spoke, he said that we had $1.4 million in road money that for this year. It's actually, there's 1.7 in projects that are out there that the highway superintendent wants to get done. The bridges, I've made a few phone calls. Most of the bridges are up to par for these trucks. But the culverts, Quattictown Farm Road's very, very old. There's a spot that somebody donated a lot where you can go in a power outage and you can take your gallon jugs of water and go get fresh spring water on Quattictown Farm Road. Right there's a culvert that runs under the road. I don't know how old that culvert is, but has there been any study to see how old that culvert is? I'm sure along Quattictown Farm Road, from that point to the other point of Quattictown Farm Road, where his business is in Putnam, that there's other culverts that are historical or 200 years old, 300 years old. These trucks are going to deteriorate those.